Wow. Well, I've had the opportunity to host both Dr. Chris Palmer and and also Dr. Georgia Eid. Both are authors of amazing books about mental health, and asking them
Yes.
what would be an expected, like, kind of good story before they discovered like metabolic health and how to like really help people with mental health issues in particular. Obviously, you had lots more going on just besides that, but like a good win before would have been something like, we find a medication that this person can like kind of manage and maybe like not lose their job, and that might only work for a limited amount of time, maybe 6 months, 12 months, or there's going to be all these terrible side effects they have to deal with, versus what they do now, again, with metabolic therapy is completely different. But I mean, the best case scenarios with some of these diagnoses, according to the medical system, is it's pretty dire. It's pretty crappy, and a terrible kind of quality of life. Like, while you're waiting to see if anything's going to improve anyway. Terrible.
Right. Yeah. Well, absolutely. And, my family was sure I was depressed. I went through extensive testing. Parkinson's is unlike really anything else, in that you spend hours and sometimes days inside a clinic with a team of doctors looking at you, assessing you. And I had been actually diagnosed by 3 of the top 12 centers in the US we went to. And so, I really had great care. I had a lot of assessment. I had 2 batteries of cognitive testing. My family was sure I'm not moving because I was depressed. And they tried medication on me, which just made me worse. And, I had the test, and he said, "You're not depressed." He said, "You're just as part of the, because you don't get the messages the same. So people with Parkinson's don't have that, and I forget what the name is called, but they don't register pleasure the same. So when you do something, so if you're out, running and you feel good, you get those endorphins. Well, you want to go back and run again. Well, for people with Parkinson's or neuro disease in that family, well, they might get the pleasure, but then it's all forgotten the next day. So there's no sort of reward. So it's really hard then to get to do something, because you don't have a memory in your body of that reward system.
Wow.
But it's only a medication to mask the symptoms, nothing to treat it, except for, which I find really fascinating now, and I see a lot of people with Parkinson's, I work at the senior center, is exercise. Every doctor, and I probably saw 8 doctors in all these teams, said the best thing you can do before you take your medication is exercise is your best medication. So that makes me really pause and think about, well, why isn't that thought about across the board in all medical fields? But that's the one thing that can slow or treat the symptoms better than actually medication, especially when you're early on.
Interesting. One of my clients, his mother has moved on, but she was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and he hired another mutual friend of ours who's a personal trainer, and he wisely would show up to this woman's house and put a record on the record player, and they would just dance. It wasn't a personal trainer to actually do what we consider exercise. It was movement.
Right.
It was a form of exercise, and I would say a very highly coordinated and natural movement, which would be dance. And so, it definitely helped. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and so you wonder why isn't it used across the board for everything, and even as a form of prevention?
Because it's free. That's why.
Right. That's right. I know.
The doctor doesn't make money on that.
No,
okay,
they don't.
So I don't think we're to the good part of the story just yet, right? You still had a few other things that you were suffering with?
No. So, I had a lot of sleep disturbances that just made things worse. Neuro-related dystonia, which is very painful, where your limbs seize up in all sorts of odd shapes. And that was part of it. But no, I came home and I did physical therapy 3 times a week. I had home health care with a walker, got rid of the walker about 6 months after, and went to cane, and did that for almost about 15 months. And it was at that point they said, okay, it's not going to get any better with physical therapy. You're just going to have to accept that this is where you are. And, I was on occasionally, maybe twice a month, I could get a quarter mile, but it set me back for 4 or 5 days. I'd be in such pain. I couldn't move. So I really was where I was at that point, almost 2 years into it, or a year and a half, was as I could walk a few blocks, and was really still on antibiotics. The infection was that bad. They said I'd have to be on life, and they thought I had a good chance of it coming back, and I probably wouldn't beat it next time. I had too many things wrong with me, and my body just, they didn't, it just, and I say, 50%, and actually Dr. Baker says, I would have given you a whole lot less chance of surviving it. It does have a tendency to come back. It encapsulates in your body and hides and waits for an opportune moment. And so it's pretty dismal. And then I had my aha moment.
Let's hear the aha moment. This is a good time for some good news here.
Yeah, good news. So, I was walking, and I get to this it's my mailbox store. I was walking, got a couple blocks, and I passed this mailbox, and it was pretty much the turning point where my body had enough. And one day I looked at it, and I was like, I'm done. I just, let this take me. I just didn't, I had no fight left in me. I just didn't. And I was just over it, and I turn around in absolute defeat, and I hear a message, and it's, okay, so you can't walk where you want to walk. What do you have in you? And I stopped and I scanned my body, probably for the first time in years. And I said, I have 10 steps, kind of shrugging my shoulders. So I turned around and I walked 10 steps and I went home. And I thought nothing of it. Because I just, my mind was almost in a fog, and I thought nothing of it. I went back and got to the mailbox, and 10 more steps, and I stopped and asked myself that question and did 10 more steps. And I did that every day for months. And I would say within 9 to 12 months later, I had walked over 1 mile, whereas I couldn't get anywhere for the first year and a half, forcing myself to do something. I just couldn't get anywhere. But those 10 steps carried me. And a few months, obviously I'm eating a hard carb, and I'm barely moving, and I had put on some weight. And about 3 months after my 10-step journey, I went across the street to somebody who was a chiropractor. He had the diet clinic, but he had a different approach than everybody else. And I came with my bag of medicine and my list of all my ailments. And he spent an hour and a half with me. And that's where he said, all right, I'm going to want you to do something that's contrary to what you're doing. You're going to trust me? And I said, sure, without knowing what he was going to say. And that's where he said, I want you to eat 50% fat, 25 protein, 25 carbs. That's how I went. And I was like, whoa, okay. One, my medicine's not going to work, and I can't afford to do that. And number two, you're going to make me fat, and I want to lose weight. So, he talked with me a little bit more, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a try at this point, because I really was not feeling well. And I didn't want to go back to the doctors because they were just going to give me another medication. I'm already on 13 plus, and I'm just being really poisoned with really on some strong medications. And I had an app to help me manage them. I mean, it was just every hour and a half I was taking some medication for something else.
Wild.
And it was like 50 pills a day or something ridiculous. Plus, I had injections. And it was just, for 3 months, I get my Parkinson's, I get a bottle of 900 pills every 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the pharmacist would and that was just the one medication. And that didn't even include the nighttime dosage that I had to take. That was another 90. But so I did that, and I was saying about 3 months, a month I wasn't feeling worse, which was positive. And about 3 months, I started to feel better eating this way. I mean, I don't know if I had 50% of a day's worth of diet worth of fat in a month previous. And my body was absolutely craving it. And, I just slowly but surely just started getting better and better. And it was about 6 to 9 months in, I ended up, I said, can I cut my carbs a little bit more? I don't want them. And they were healthy carbs. It was clean keto what I did. It wasn't, packaged or junk food. It might have been a sweet potato or a dried, I might do a plantain on one day, but it was good, nutritious food. I started to add steak more. I started to crave steak more. Started to want the whole steak. Started to want to eat the whole fat naturally. And then was when my fat got up to 70, 80% that I noticed that my neuro symptoms were getting better. And that's 9 months down the road. And that's where the light bulb went off in my head.
That's amazing. When you go back, you say you were doing quote unquote clean keto. Did you know at the time you were doing clean keto, or were you just kind of following the chiropractor's kind of recommendations to just have more fat?
Yeah, I was just doing that to get my 50% fat. And then, I started to, because I'm starting to feel better. He started to send me info and said, how about, why don't you start, I had eliminated nightshades. And of course I wasn't doing gluten. I hadn't been doing that either because of the RA. That I started to then explore a little bit more keto and realize it was, but yeah, I eat healthy. So that was kind of the natural part. So at first, no, I wasn't aware that it had a name, keto. Eventually it did. And I definitely, by the time that I was 70, 80% fat, that I noticed a huge change with my neuro, including my cognitive was improving. I started to notice I didn't need to take my pills every 3.5 hours. Normally, I could tell you within the minute it was time to take the pills because I could feel my body starting to slow down and the medication wearing down. And now I'm getting a 4.5 hours, which was pretty miraculous. And I was like, I don't need to take a dose, and yet. And that really was my light bulb moment where I connected everything, and I realized, oh, wow, I'm healing, and I'm not sure, what I have wrong with me. And that's where I started to feel hopeful. And then I just ran with it.